If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Welcome to Forward Watch, the podcast that brings you real conversations and practical insights on leadership, professional growth, and forging a path in the maritime industry. In this episode, we introduce Lara, a rising talent who's just landed her dream role after years of relentless hard work and determination. If you've ever wondered how to turn aspiration into reality, Lara's journey will inspire you. Today, you'll hear how Lara's commitment to self-awareness and her pursuit of the advanced leadership training set her apart during a competitive interview process. We unpack the strategies she used not only to present her strengths with confidence, but also to ask bold, insightful questions that helped her assess the culture and values of her future team, flipping the interview on its head. Lara reveals how to navigate tough questions about past roles, spot red flags in workplace culture before accepting a position, and why nurturing relationships and building a strong professional network can open unexpected doors. She also shares her top 3 actual tips for anyone looking to stand out and secure once-in-a-lifetime job offer. Whether you're preparing for your next interview or aiming to create a more positive culture in your team, this conversation is packed with advice you can put into practice right now. Let's dive in. Lara, welcome to Yachting International Radio and the Forward Watch podcast that specifically focuses on leadership. It's a pleasure to have you. And what's so exciting about today's interview is that the listeners will be able to walk away with some new insights and skills that they can apply in their career. So I'm going to dive straight in. Lara has been working in the industry now for 5.5 years. She's very fortunate to be in a purser role position, something that she's been striving for a long time. And in fact, she just landed her dream job. And what's even more special about this, Lara, you might have to give me some, clarify if I get this wrong, but this dream vessel of yours came into port and you looked at it one day and you thought, that's the vessel I want to be on. And now in a couple of weeks, you're flying to start a new role on that vessel as a purser. Is that right?
Yes, that's 100% correct. I remember it coming to dock next to us and in Grenada and thinking, wow, that's a beautiful yacht. And I would just love to get onto something like that one day. So yeah, felt like I manifested it. But yeah, I'm feeling, so grateful to be here chatting to you. Thank you so much for having me, Karine.
So how did it feel to get that job offer on your dream boat?
I was so over the moon. I just, so many mixed emotions of excitement, gratitude, and just a lot of pride for how far I've come, both personally and professionally in the industry. And just knowing you secured a position you're very, very passionate about and very passionate about the purser role on board. I think it's very important, knowing that you secured now this position on a great vessel too. And it just provides a sense of stability and, security and knowing that you're getting somewhere where you have opportunity to grow and develop your skills further, like in a supportive environment. So yeah, it's just I'm just so happy at the moment. I'm just so excited to get started. Yeah.
Amazing. Good. So let's jump into how you performed in this interview so we can impart your knowledge to our listeners. Now, I'm sure the interview process or your experience of the interview was very different to previous interviews, having new insights and knowledge as a result of doing the advanced leadership course. you had to do a research inquiry in the course. And essentially, for those who don't know what that is that you've got to ask for feedback. And it's not very common for heads of departments or captains to ask for feedback from crew that are more junior. So having that knowledge and carrying that through to the interview process, how was that helpful?
So I think through that research inquiry, I was really able to get invaluable self-awareness. So it really was able to highlight strengths that I hadn't really fully acknowledged yet, and areas where I wanted to develop. And, this allowed me to speak quite confidently about my abilities, also showing insight into where I wanted to grow, and where I wanted to go in my career. I thought I was able to, really understand myself. Yeah, I was all about that self-awareness. It demonstrated, I think, to the interviewers that I knew myself very well. I was proactive about my professional development, and I was very intentional about finding a role that supports both my strengths and the opportunities that I'm looking for to grow and better myself. So, I think it just made me way more self-aware, and that gave me a lot more confidence and much more to speak about, I think, going into the interview.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So what sort of questions were you asked?
I was just asked questions like, they mainly were going through my experience and just asking, why did you leave your previous vessel? Or what was it like working on this boat or on, this large yacht? How, what kind of experiences did you get from there? How my purser course was, what I really enjoyed from my purser course most. Things like those kind of questions. It's obviously when getting asked why you left your previous vessel only after 7 months can be a bit like, if you feel like you don't really want to, badmouth a vessel or anything. But I was completely honest with them. And I think I was very lucky because I also had a captain on there who backed me up in a reference. And I think as you get along with this interview, you'll be able to see that one of the key things, I think, in the industry is making sure you create really strong relationships, because I think that reference was super important for me landing my job, my dream job. So, yeah.
I absolutely agree. That's what I found incredibly helpful in finding work for myself, was my network and maintaining those relationships. Yeah, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's the recruitment agent, your captain, a second stew. It's so vitally important, and thinking about your personal brand and how you want to show up.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay.
And they also, sorry, I forgot to mention, they also asked me, like what, basically they wanted to know more about me in the end, instead of just my experience, which I really, really liked. Just saying, tell us all about your experiences, like, not just yachting related. Chat to us about your master's degree, why you wanted to do that. So they really wanted to know why, they looked at my CV as a whole, and they really wanted to understand the big picture of me, which was great.
So it sounds like they were assessing character traits as well as soft skills.
Yes.
So in the course, you learned about behavioral style interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that you asked the captain's questions, which I think
I did.
very intimidating. Like, I'm the one being interviewed. Can I really be put in a position to question them? But as we know,
Yes.
some toxic vessels, toxic crew out there, and it's important for you to find a job that is suitable for you, but also the one that you love and is aligned with your values and what you're looking for. So what sort of questions did you ask them?
So basically, they did open the floor to be like, Lara, do you have any questions? And I was like, yes, actually I do. And I had written down, I went into the interview very prepared. I've had interviews for land-based jobs before, over the years. because whilst I did my master's degree, I did some land-based work. But I basically asked them, what are the exact roles and responsibilities for this position? What is the expected guest interaction? What qualities and skills are most critical for me to be successful in this role? I asked them what kind of accounting tools and collaboration tools they potentially used on the boat, and how they would describe the crew culture. That was one of my top priorities to understand. And if they did any crew activities together and how often, and is there a training budget, and what does long-term success look like in this role, and what I can do coming into this role to, really meet the expectations of the owner, the captains, and my rotational partner. So those are all the questions. It was an hour-long interview. So, yeah.
And were they taken aback by the questions, do you think? They were?
Not at all. In fact, the one question that I asked, I think it was the one of what is the expected level of guest interaction. That the captain was like, that's a good question, actually. And yeah, he was very happy to answer all the questions. Obviously, some things that in the initial interview can't really answer to their full extent, but they were able to give me a really, really good overview and idea, because I had 2 rounds of interviews. So, yeah.
Did you get feedback at all?
I did. She gets well, I did actually. So I did hear the chief officer's friends with my brother, and he informed me that the captain was impressed. So after the first round, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, please. Yeah, so that's any real feedback I got. But yeah.
Once you get back on board, it would be interesting to receive that feedback. Actually ask, because just to hear from a different perspective what they found impressive.
Yes, it would be. I'll definitely ask them.
Did you get asked a question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? I know that we touched on it briefly, because I know it's common to be asked that question in interviews. And some interviewees could think, oh, I don't want to be boastful and say I'm amazing at this and that. And it's a very female mentality to think like that. And then weaknesses is a hard one, because you don't want to make out that you're not capable for the role. So it is a little bit of a tricky question. How do you navigate that question, and what is your recommendation around how to deal with a question like that?
I think the question I think they asked you, it wasn't directly what are your strengths and weaknesses. They'll just be like, what skills and what do you think you can bring to the boat and in your role? They didn't directly ask me about my weaknesses, so I didn't really touch on them. I basically just was like, I know for a fact that I bring with me, a lot of soft skills, and I have great educational background. I just mentioned certain, the strengths that I have found throughout the course. And then I also said, but I know for a fact that in my next role, I am still looking to improve myself on X, Y, and Z. Okay. And to do that, I want to take, a financial management course. And I linked it back to them saying, if there is a training budget, then I'll be like, that's amazing, because I really, really want to do this course. And I think I showed them in a way that, yes, I know where I want to improve. But I didn't really highlight too much of my weaknesses. It can be quite difficult, but they never directly asked me about it. So, yeah.
I think, again, it shows self-awareness, and the fact that you initiated, really gave that information is very impressive. Let's talk about your previous vessels, or, I would say vessels that there was a toxic environment on board. Going into this interview, and obviously no one wants to work in a toxic environment. What are the warning signs? A hard question because in interviews, people can sell you an amazing package and it's not what it is in reality. So, yeah, how would you say could you enter an interview to assess what type of culture exists on board?
So yeah, obviously the previous boat I was on was quite a toxic work environment. And I do remember I took the job on that vessel, kind of knowing it wasn't going to be the easiest in terms of crew culture, just because the captain in that interview last year, there was some red flags. Like, he's amazing. The toxic environment on that boat was nothing to do with the captains. They were honestly two of the best captains I've ever worked with. But he did mention, there's an issue with a certain crew member, and they've been through about 4 interior managers in the past year. And I was like, whoa, okay. So that's a big red flag. But I knew I just, coming back into the industry, I really needed to gain experience again. And I saw it as an opportunity to grow and learn how to deal with people and psychology skills and everything. And he was very open with me. So I think, I always go with your gut feeling. I was like, listen, like, it doesn't sound like the greatest gig, but let me take it for the experience. But I kind of realized after a couple months, wow, this is really, it just got worse and worse as the months went on. But it is what it is. And I have no regrets because that relationship I formed with those captains and that reference, I think, ended up getting me my dream gig now. But I think when you're trying to look for the red flags during an interview, I think it's all about listening very closely to how the interviewer describes things like the crew culture and whether or not they look like, commitment, how they can keep crew, like longevity wise. They value that. And just actively listening on how they speak about their team members. So that's why it's so important, I think, to ask them about crew culture. What crew activities do they do, if any? And I think the moment that opens up a conversation with them and you're able to see whether or not it's like a thing that they're like a bit uppity about you asking them about, or if they're like, yes, we did this crew activity, and then they start to joke around, we have this funny, engineer here that, was doing, singing or something, like it opens up that conversation where you can see that the captain really valued the crew bonding and happy crew and longevity. And I think it's just about asking, trying to get him to open up about things like that. I think if a captain's not able to chat very warmly about his crew, and I think that's a bit of a red flag, or the HOD or whoever's interviewing you. I was lucky in my interview, I could tell he was incredibly warm. He was very open. And the whole interview just made me feel completely at ease. And it felt more like a conversation than an interview in the end. And there was 2 people in the interview, and I, paid attention to how they interacted with each other. That, they were quite friendly. They seemed to be very respectful, like dynamic. Like I said, in the course you learn, one of my weaknesses was active listening. And I felt like I was really able to practice it in the course, through listening to everyone's SWOT analysis. And now I was able to see, okay, what I'm feeling, what am I hearing, what am I seeing, kind of thing. And then, so I used that to, really get a feel for that dynamic and with their leadership and the crew vibe and culture. Like I said, it's never going to be, you're never going to get on board a boat that's going to be perfect, and they can just be selling you. But I got really good vibes, positive vibes from this interview by asking those questions and active listening to them, and looking at their gestures, not just the words. Yeah.
That's really important. So talking about culture, obviously we deep dived into that subject in the course. And I think, not many people understand the meaning of culture. I think on a superficial level, yes, like you've got your drug and alcohol type of boats, fun party boats, we say, party boats. And then you've got the opposite of that. So what is your take on culture? What is your understanding of culture?
I think my understanding of culture is something that's like, what kind of values, underpins the crew. And just like, I always actually, I find this question quite difficult because, yeah, for me, it's mainly the atmosphere and the values that underpin, I think, the crew dynamics and how they interact with one another. If there's respect, if there's teamwork, if there's, it's a fun crew, active crew, things like that. If that's like defining a crew culture for me and collaboration, I think if those values are defined as, if someone in an interview said, okay, we're fit, we're fun, we value respect, collaboration, teamwork, confidentiality, all those kind of things, that for me is like a great crew culture going in. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, you haven't. You've hit it nail on the head. I think it's largely to do with values. But the second part of that is seeing those values on the floor. So instead of just having a plaque up and saying, loyalty, respect, teamwork, it's actually demonstrated on the floor. And that showed that people are living out those values, and that's what builds culture. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's making sure it's somehow instilled in the work every day kind of thing. And
yeah, like an obvious one, let's say respect is part of your values, but then you're seeing crew bitching and gossiping about one another. That's not living out that value. And then it's addressed and extinguished. Otherwise, it's going to override the ideal culture that you're striving for.
Yeah. But it's making sure that, you keep it in order in a way. If like you said, if people talking badly behind people's backs and HOD is aware of it, it's, calling them aside and saying, listen, that's not what we do on here. And just reiterating the values, like you said, embedding it into feedback. And yeah.
So what are you most excited about in terms of applying your knowledge that you've learned in the course on board?
I think I'm just very excited going in and being more emotionally intelligent and more aware of how to handle people, conflicts, providing advice, because essentially, I think my role, these other HODs on board and my role is mainly just a little parachute role. But I think also I would love to, since there's a training budget, I would love to, encourage like second stewards or, anyone on board that's looking to advance their leadership skills to take the course. And also just like maybe, if one of the HODs comes to me and says, I see you've done the advanced leadership course, what can I do to, is there any advice of tools that I can use? I'd be like, why don't you do a value workshop for your team? Or, providing like an advisory kind of role. But I can't really get, I'm not really an HOD, unfortunately, going into this job. I'm more of like, I'm purely just admin. But I think, providing that advice will be important. And yeah, I think I can use now my understanding of myself and where I want to go to, really prove myself on board and just goodness.
Sounds like what you're describing there is servant leadership, which is I don't know if
Yes.
you're about servant leadership before doing the course, but I'd say it's more of a new leadership style that has come into fruition. And it's not about doing what I say, but it's like, well, how can I support, coach, and guide you to get you where you need to be? So a completely different approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, Lara. 2, 3 points of advice for someone who is seeking their dream role and who may have some interviews coming up. What would you advise them to do to feel more confident in their interviews?
Well, firstly, I know that the industry is incredibly tough at the moment. There's so many people coming into the industry, staying in the industry for longer. It's become incredibly competitive. So it can be very disheartening at times when you're applying for multiple roles, not getting anything, hearing anything, or even getting to the interview stage. So it is disheartening, but people need to, keep going and just being confident with themselves. And I think the 3 things I would say is understanding your values and knowing what your goals are. Write them down so that you can confidently articulate these to your agent or to the person interviewing you. It helps you to see what you're looking for and why you're looking for this particular job. Also, the secondly would be understanding your strengths and growth areas, and being prepared to talk about both of them, and knowing what steps you need to take to grow. So stating, okay, I want to take this course, or I need to do X, Y, and Z to get to, this point, or to be in this position. If you're second student, you consider being want to take my advanced leadership course, so that I can, step into a chief stewardess role, like things like that. Really showing that that's, where you need to go. And thirdly, which I think is also one of the most important, is investing in networking and your relationships in the industry. So staying connected with your old former captains and really creating a strong bond and relationship with agents. There's like 2 or 3 agents in the industry that are just, for me, I've been able to work with so incredibly well. And they were able to see my personality. And, even if I was an underdog in the applications in terms of experience, they're like, we're going to put you forward because we know you've got, your soft skills will be perfect match to this boat. And that's because I kept in contact with them. I chatted with them, and they got to know me as a person. So I think just, respecting your agents and keeping in contact with them, keeping in contact with your former captains or HODs, because a strong reference or an advocate can really open up doors, even if you're missing that essential experience, maybe. And just never underestimate the power of a good relationship in this industry. That's it. The 3 main things I think I would say.
Oh, thank you so much, Lara, for your time and sharing your knowledge. I feel that many people will be inspired by this interview, and more importantly, walk away with skills that they can apply in their own, and hopefully they can land their dream job as well.